Welcome to today's episode of Expert Showcase. Today on the show we have Reverend Michael Steele, and he's going to talk to us about a Reverend's view on marriage and divorce. 4 wives later. Hey, Reverend Steele, how you doing today?
Hi, pleasant. Good afternoon to you, Chris. I think it's afternoon my time here in Barbados. What time is it over there in the Penn State?
Oh, it is. It is afternoon today. Yes, it's. So we're at least yeah, we can say good afternoon. This is wonderful, folks. I am so stoked to have somebody from Barbados. Not only just somebody, but Reverend Michael Steele from Barbados on the show today. As you know from watching Expert Showcase, we've had a lot of incredible experts around the topic of marriage, divorce, and better relationships. And Michael, Reverend Steele is just another one in the long line. He is about to lay down some epic knowledge on you. So I hope you're ready. So get some water or something and just hunker down because you've got to listen to what Reverend Steele has to. If Reverend Steele's got his water, you've got to listen to what Reverend Steele has to say. So as we do every episode for Expert Showcase, I'm going to go ahead and start off, and we're going to talk to Reverend Steele about his hero's journey. Now, for those of you just tuning in and are used to a typical hero's journey, we've kind of condensed it. We talk about the beginning, the turnaround, and the aftermath. The beginning being whatever happened before the turnaround, before that led to that deep, dark place or that turning point. Then we got the turning point and what happened all around there. And then we get into the aftermath and the success and the great things that are happening today. So, Reverend Steele, before we get into each point individually, give our folks a quick overview of your journey.
Well, my journey was I I've taken a lot of years to get to this place of being in a position where I can come and talk about it. You can understand that marriage and divorce is very emotional, and it can be very traumatic in some instances. But my journey began because I came up as a young man from a single parent raised just with my mom, and I always had a passion to have a family. Because I was raised without a dad, I always wanted to be in a position where I can give a child what I never had. And as a Christian, the only way to do that would be through marriage. And I got married at a young age in my 20s, early 20s, because it's one of those things where you think everybody else is getting married, and what about you? And I didn't want to go into the dating stuff because well, as a Christian, I kept myself. I was not sexually active, because I was one of those very, I followed the doctrine, I followed the guidelines, and I wanted to make sure I did it the correct way. So, long story short, before we get into all the details, I got married on the drop of a hat. I didn't do a lot of the counseling. I didn't go through all the necessary things, and that went pear-shaped. And then when that went pear-shaped, I was separated for a number of years, and I left Barbados, went to England, and then I got divorced because I still wanted to have a family, but couldn't have a family without a wife. And so I remarried again to a much younger person, and that again, you look in the first mistake you made and you think, okay, I'll try to do it this way, that might work better, and I'll make sure I put this in place and that in place. You kind of you want to put everything in their perspective, and
Yeah.
when that happened with it was a younger person, it was a white person, cultural change as well, cultural dynamics, and that went pear-shaped as well, and the person, they went back to where they came from. That was a bitter, a very, very bitter um, journey for me. And then I was still at that place where I just wanted to totally give up, because first it started and it didn't go the way you planned, and then you tried again, and it didn't go the way you planned. But in the
Yeah.
back of my mind was the lack of the fact that I did not fulfill what I want to fulfill, which is I want a family. and
Yeah.
and I'm not going to go out there and make the mistake that my family made by having these kids outside of wedlock. And I get a lot of stick for that, but I still wanted to have a family that I know I'm going to raise, I'm going to be dear.
Yeah.
And I got involved with somebody that had kids because I thought that, okay, that's somebody that's stable, they're more serious, more committed. And that went pear-shaped. She went her way after the acknowledge of how serious I am as a reverend and what I stand for, and
Yeah.
then the children. We have issues that are so challenging. And then my final thing happened. My dad died from cancer, and a person who after my last marriage failed, a person who became my good friend, and my dad liked her a lot. And my dad asked her a strange question. She wasn't even my girlfriend or something. My dad just asked her, unbeknown to me, if she would give me a kid, because my dad knew that all my heart I just wanted to have a family. He knew me. And she told my dad, yes, I didn't know this. But when my dad succumbed to his cancer, and he died in England, I went up, buried my dad, and I came back, and I said, I'm going to try one last time, and I'm going to do it the way I wanted to do it, which is to get married. And I did. And I have a son now. So that's a little bit of a snapshot
So,
of the journey for you right there. I think
yeah.
that does.
Yes, that's great. So, and I say it's great because it's interesting. You had a lot of challenges. You did what every one of us does. We make decisions that sometimes are spontaneous and other times are more thought out. And if they're the right decisions, then they last. If they're not, then we have to change. You went through a very dark time. Losing a parent. I've been there. I know how. I know how I felt. I can only imagine how you felt. The amazing thing is that your parent gave you your dad gave you the greatest, I'll say, the greatest gift in the world, which was to try and take care of you after he was gone, and it led to a loving and great relationship. So that is epic. Let's dig into each piece a little bit, because what our audience really loves to do is loves to identify with our guest and say, oh, I can see that I might be going through something like that right now. So, you'll be helping our audience hopefully avoid, maybe some of the pitfalls. So let's start off during the beginning phase. With having Now, remember, we only have about an hour today, and each of these segments are short. So, with having three marriages, I don't know. I was in one myself. I guess we could talk for 3 or 4 hours on each marriage, but we'll hit the high points. So first question to throw out to you. If I heard you right, you kind of got married without, I don't want to say without thinking, because you did think, but it was kind of it sounded like it was a little bit rushed. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, it was. I was in the church. I came up in the church, and as a young man, I was in my 20s. I got saved when I was 11, 12 years old, and then I kept on in the church, and I joined the church when I got seriously committed when I was about 16, 17 years old, seriously to the core committed.
Okay.
And all the time in church, you see the younger guys getting married, and then they have their kids, and you look at yourself, and you're out there ministering, you're out there helping, you're out there caring, and you live alone, because I lived on my own as well after I was 19, 20 years old. And you get to the place of that loneliness, that void. And I'm not one who really wanted to go through relationships, as in girlfriend, boyfriend, where you kind of, I use the term, I don't want to be taster tested, a lot
Yeah, I love that. I
of
don't want to be taste tested. That is, I love that, man. That's
in the,
epic.
in the church. One of the things that I was seeing is a lot of young men in the church, and the young girls, and they get involved, and they become sexually active, and then they don't want that person, and then they're sexually active with somebody else, and they don't want that person, and it gets to a place where they lose themselves, they lose their focus. And I think marriage for them becomes just to have a sexual relationship. It's not something about family. And for me, that was not where I wanted to be. I wanted to have a family. and that was my focus. So when I got my first opportunity to get married, I met this wonderful person in the church. I didn't get to know them so much. I knew about their love for God and their passion and all that good stuff, but I didn't take the time to develop a relationship, a bond, and I didn't do the counseling. So I
So,
think
so
that's
yeah. So let me ask you a question. Pardon me for interrupting, but let me ask you a question because I think you just said a real key point. The fact that you didn't take the time. I believe in love at first sight. And granted, maybe I'm not the best because my ex-wife and I fell in love at first sight, and now we're divorced. But we actually did fall in love, and I guess I wonder from a because I've known a lot of people in very strong faith-based relationships. I wonder, do you feel that you went so quickly because it was a faith-based relationship, so you had everything else in common, and it wasn't that you fell deep in love, or do you believe you at that point had fallen in love with her, and everything else was just it was, I'll say, nice because she was religious and part of the church and everything.
well, let me pull the wisdom of all four of my relationships into this answer, because if I had answered back then, I might answer you in youthful ignorance. Youthful ignorance meaning that you feel the emotion, you feel the passion, and people telling you no, this is not a good idea because they're older, and you never see the little bullet points that they see. So I personally know, I don't believe, I know that you can go on a trip and meet somebody right there and marry that person and spend the rest of your life with them and no problems, no troubles. I know that because I now understand some different dynamics of the associations, the neuro associations, the spiritual associations, and the physical associations, or should you use the word attractions. So I do believe that you can meet somebody immediately, fall in love with them, they fall in love with you, you get married, you have a family, and nothing never happens. I believe that 100%. Um, but when I use the term I didn't take enough time, I'm speaking from the fact that I was much younger, and I didn't have a lot of experience in some of the dynamics that are necessary for a relationship to be healthy. For example,
Ah,
quarreling and arguing is extremely healthy. As a matter of fact, if you have a relationship where there's no quarreling and there's no arguing and there's no debate, there's something lacking.
yeah.
And there's a facade that with time, the possibility of something that would trigger a negative response or an immediate I'm done with this would shock a person because they never realized that what was missing is that intricate friction that a relationship needs to keep it dirty, clean, up, down, going, coming, happy, sad. Those emotions are necessary for a healthy relationship, and that's what I believe.
And I think to further that thought, would you agree that if that happens early on, you end up learning how to deal with the friction so that when the major things happen, you can deal with it better. Whereas if you have no friction and all of a sudden something really bad happens, you've never learned how to deal with it with your partner. You just have, it is what it is, and it ends up it ends up being something that'll tend to destroy a marriage much quicker than if you learned how to deal with it. Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
Well, I personally, if a couple tells me they want to get married and they're interested in getting married, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't I base this on my experiences and the wisdom that I've attained, and forgive me for others who think differently. But if a person wants to get married and they're all butterflies and everything is wonderful, their parents love them, they love their parents, and they're happy, they don't quarrel, they don't argue. As far as I'm concerned, they're not candidates for marriage, personally. But if somebody comes now and they tell me, man, I'm always quarreling with her. She gets under my skin. She gets me so annoyed and she gets me so edgy. I don't even know. She's from another planet and I'm from, if somebody tells me that, I'm saying, you know what, you guys are ready to get married. And let me explain what I'm saying when I say that. I don't want you to kind of take it to an extreme. But what I'm trying to say is that you're engaging.
Yep.
You're being real. The person is not ashamed to let you know they're angry. They're not trying to keep you, so they pretend not to be angry when they are and just grit their teeth. You see them angry. They feel comfortable to be themselves, and I think that that's one of the healthy things for a relationship, when individuals are comfortable with themselves and they conflict and they clash, but it's not about us separating or going our ways. It's about us learning to deal with the dynamics that are a part of this relationship.
Exactly, and that's an epic point, and it's so. I think it really, for me, and I know it's been a very very brief conversation about, about the three, the beginning piece, but it sounds like for me that was one of your big learnings. And folks, as you're going to be able to tell from this entire episode, you're going to want to get in contact with Reverend Self. So I'm gonna give you a doctorate in something. I'll give you an honorary doctorate in just in the crap of life or something like that. But no, in all seriousness, you're gonna want to know that you're gonna want to get in touch with Reverend Steele because he's been there. And for my money, the people you want to learn from, the people who have actually been there in the school of hard knocks, and the people who have made their mistakes and are willing to talk about it and admit it. So what I can really tell from our brief conversation on this is one of the big things that you learned was the fact that you did have it was rainbows, and as the old song goes, rainbows and roses and whiskers on kittens, and all the other stuff. These are a few of my favorite things. All the other funny rainbows, unicorns, all the other fun stuff. And what in the end you realized is that while you don't want to marry somebody you hate, you have to marry somebody that you can interact with and is willing to have that give and take with you. So, folks, if you're listening to this and you're questioning on who you want to marry, if it is all rainbows, see if you can interact with that person. Don't try to start a fight, but put yourself in a situation where you want to interact with that person and see how it goes. Because, you could find you've got somebody there that you just don't want to be with because they don't interact with you the same way, right, Reverend Steele?
Yeah, and also you said don't pick a fight, but personally, I advise people pick a fight, and deliberately so. I'm sorry, I make no apologies for saying it that way. Pick a fight. And when I say pick a fight, kind of get under their skin, because you see, a serial killer can be your best friend and so quiet and so nice, and you think, wow, this person is just an angel from heaven, man, and you don't realize that they're suppressing a lot of
Yeah.
anger. They're suppressing a lot of hatred, and life is full of triggers that come at unusual times. And if you have a courtship that does not trigger that person's anger buttons or that person's frustrated buttons, I promise you that when you get into a marriage, there's some dynamics that we're going to talk about down the road. But when you get married, some realities are going to click in. The realities of you belong to me, and we don't like to say that, but that is a reality that changes dynamics.
Yeah.
It changes persons' behavior, their attitude, their concept, the way they look at life, the way they look at things. And because of those dynamics, if you get that person angered when you belong to them, you'll see a different side that you
Yeah.
you might be shocked about. And that's a reality. That's not, you ain't gonna get that in no textbook. You get that from somebody who's been there, seen it happen over and over again, and then they understand that those are just the dynamics of human existence and the dynamics of kind of an individual being themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so to kind of to I'll say move on to the turning point, because I think there's so much more about the beginning phase and so much more you learned. We're going to cover, I know, some of that later on Expert Focus. For the rest of it, we'll have to figure out how to do more videos, that sort of thing, because the message needs to get out. And if you're watching this video, well, you obviously are. If you heard me just ask you the question, you need to get in touch with Reverend Steele and see what he's got to offer in his programs, and just get to know him, because it's definitely going to be a benefit to you. So let's move into the turning point. So the turning point, it sounds like to me, came maybe when your dad died, or did it come at a different time?
Well, I think that and it's unfortunate. it's unfortunate. I don't speak with on this subject with any great pride or joy. I don't and I want to put a disclaimer that's very important here. You know, persons need to be at the place of recognizing that I don't support divorce. I'm not one for divorce. It sounds wow. How could you be not for divorce when this has happened? But the dynamics that took place caused that to happen. But the turning point for me came at the end of every relationship. There's a turning point. Every time of separation, you have to come to a turning point where you say, you know what, I got to get up and dust myself off and go again, because I've not accomplished what I set out to accomplish. I want to have a family, and that's a turning point. And each time it goes a pear shape, you have to get to a place of another turning point, and that's sad. From my story, but the reality is that there was no one turning point, because there were four different marriages. You get what I'm saying?
I get what
But
you're saying. Let me ask you a quick question, and let me interrupt for a second. I want to ask you a question because I think that thought deserves to be explored just a little bit more. At the beginning, I think I heard you say that even from the start, you wanted a family. Now, just a quick yes or no. That was true,
that's
correct?
correct. That's correct.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that, because you also brought up the family again, would it be fair to say that at each of these turning points, what happened is you, for at least a moment, got recommitted to having a family and recommitted to what your original goal was, and then whether it got off track or not, I'm not sure, but is that kind of what happened, where you're like, okay, I was committed to this goal, it didn't happen. Now I have to get recommitted to this thing. Is that kind of what was going on?
I think you're jumping the gun here with my
Okay. I think we're really connecting at this point.
you're jumping the gun. What one of the and we'll get into the details of the turning point, the critical turning point. We'll get into the details of that. But one of the major details for this final turning point was my dad passing away, and my dad loved the person I'm married to now, and she absolutely loved my dad, and I never had a father. I've not spent 40 days with my dad. I've met him when I was 28 years old, and that took a toll on me, being raised with the stepfathers
Yeah.
and seeing family turmoils and stuff. But when my dad approved of my now wife, and then he died, my heart said there's nobody else for my father to approve. I will never have my father's approval again. I will never have the joy of my father, knowing that, hey, there's a special person that is there with my son, and I know she's going to take care of my son. I know she's going to treat my son good. Um, I will never have that. And sometimes in life, I think we need a solid purpose for why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Why are we committed here? And my solid purpose was not just my dad, but it was also the fact that this person found me when I was at the bottom of my ladder, at the bottom of my line. I gave up. I was way down,
Yeah.
and they see past that, and I was kind of wowed, because in my previous relationships, I was up, I was rolling, I had stuff going on. I was living in the UK, I lived in the States, I was in Barbados, so but now here's somebody when I look like nothing, I have nothing to offer, and other than I'm a human being with a passion for a family. That's all I had, really. And I wanted to treat somebody special, and I have not given up on that. So the turning point for me came when I realized, wow, this person has everything different than what I was attracted to. And then the other thing is that I was not whoopsie-doo over head over heels about the person either. That's another thing. So for me, it was like, wow, this isn't where I would be if I was running around making my choices, because my eyes see things the different way. But
Right.
now I'm looking with mature eyes, responsible eyes, and committed eyes, and eyes that realize you're getting older, you're not getting younger.
Yeah, exactly. And that, it's funny because it sounds so, I'll say procedural, but I can tell just from prepping the show and just from looking in your eyes and everything that you do love your wife, and that's the most important. Look at the smile. Everybody, look at the smile. I'm looking around at the audience. So look at the smile here. But that becomes the important thing. You know, I think when people can love us when we are at rock bottom and we're, you know, basically have quote unquote are buck naked and don't have two nickels to rub together, that's the toughest time to love us. It's easy to love people when they're successful. It's easy to love people when they're making money. It's easy to love people when they're adored by everybody else. But it's tough to love them when they're down and when you see all the bad stuff about them. And if they can, then you know it's somebody that, even if it doesn't fit, in my opinion, even if it's somebody that doesn't fit into our model of who we thought we'd end up with, we ought to at least look at them because you know
I,
we might be looking in the wrong direction.
yeah, I think one of the high accolades I want to give to my wife and all those women out there who see a man who looks like nothing. I think a wife. You see, I'm going to go into the concept of a wife and a woman because they're two different things. Every
Yeah.
wife is a woman, but every woman is not a wife. But we'll deal with that another time. But a wife is a person who looks at an individual who has nothing to offer or nothing and sees that she can cause him by her contribution to his life to become something. But a husband also is a man, I believe, that looks at a woman and he doesn't see what she has or what she is able to give to him, but he sees what he can give to her and bring out of her because of his association with her. And when two individuals look at each other and says, "Don't worry, bud, I got your back. Don't worry, you know, I'm gonna be here with you. I'm rolling with you." You get an appreciation for enjoying the victories that you have, as opposed to you celebrate what you already have there, so there's no great victory. But when you earn it together, when you expend energy and planning and strategy to make it happen together, that's awesome. That's epic.
Yeah,
That's your
that
word.
is
That's epic.
that is epic, and you know to kind of further that thought and roll and kind of roll up on the turning point before we get to the aftermath. I look at it very similar, and say that you know when two people come together and create and their union or their marriage or their friendship or what have you is greater than the sum of its parts, then that's what makes it special. You know, it's kind of like you know it's not necessarily that you're completing each other, but you're actually creating a whole new you know a whole new being, so to speak, that is greater than the sum of the that is greater than the
That's
sum of
right.
the parts. So epic. So we got to the turning point, and the turning point, it's similar yet different from everybody else's. Meaning, you know, it got to a point where you realize that you didn't have opportunities to do. You know, I'm going to kind of generalize it, not to diminish it, but to put it in different terms for some of our audience, so that if they're going through a different circumstance, you know, you got to a point where you realize that you had things that you had to take advantage of because they were never going to happen. They were never going to be available again. And that's a very powerful, you know, that's a, if it's done for the right reasons, that's a very powerful thing. So you took advantage of this. And that kind of leads us into the aftermath. And the interesting part, the aftermath is, of course, this successful time. Leading from the turning point into the aftermath, I'll say the aftermath also includes kind of when you realized that your current wife was going to be your wife, and kind of realized that, oh, this is what you know this is the direction you were going to go, and this is what you wanted. Um, any I'll say, without getting deep into the story, any words of wisdom from that kind of decision, that kind of way of thinking that you feel would be helpful for our audience?
Yes, I think first thing is you recognize that you're different, and and once you recognize you're different, my wife is a great teacher. My wife now, both of us together are great teachers, and because we take time to analyze the situations, and then we kind of come to a an agreement. either to disagree or to agree, but it does not come to a place where we are it is affecting our relationship. Our relationship is not on the table. Our relationship is not up for debate. Our relationship, if we're going to stay together or not stay together, it's not up for debate. This glass of water that I have on the computer desk might be the wife saying, "Hon, you know you should put a ashtray. I mean a thing under it and don't let the water run there." And I said, "Oh man, hon, that's a little thing." And when that's done, I'm gonna say, "Oh, boo, give me a kiss. Come here." Because it's not affecting our relationship. And one of the things that is very, very important for being able to make a decision, this is the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, is if she could see you naked but still love you. And that might sound a little bit deep, but what I'm trying to say is if she could see the real you, the happy you, the sad you, the emotional you, the crying you, the laughing you, the angry you, the mad you, the family you, the philanthropic you, whatever the you is, if she can see the real you and say, I want to follow you. I want to go where you go. I want your friends to be my friends. I just want my life to be wrapped up in your life. And you look at her and you says, wow, I want that as well. I like her friends. I like the choice of people she has around her. I like how she treats them, and I like how they treat her. All of these are dynamics that are going to play out themselves in your marriage.
Yeah.
And it, go on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
was going to say, and it can only, I always talk about transformation and the fact that I don't believe anybody changes, they only transform into what they were meant to be. So, I think that we go through these changes and people go through different times and they're different when they're children, It's like the old adage, when I was a child, I acted like a child, I spoke like a child, and now that I'm an adult, I put away my childish ways or something close to that. I believe that we have a blueprint inside of us that God, the universe, a higher power, whatever higher power that you and the audience happen to believe in, put inside of you. And I think over time you transform into that. If you're lucky and if you do the right things, you transform into that. So it sounds to me, Reverend Steele, like during the aftermath period, when after the turning point, after all this stuff happened, you learned from everything that happened before, learned that you were probably a little different than what you were, I'll say, meant to be, and you transformed. And along this transformation, you were lucky enough to be transforming and have that woman, the person that you're going to live the rest of your life with, and the person that was going to finally fill all those buckets there, and you could go through maybe the final bits of transformation with her. Is that fair to say? Does that all make sense, or am I completely off base on this?
No, you're on base. There are a lot of dynamics that are involved there, but you definitely are on base. And there's one critical thing. There are a number of critical things, but one of the most critical things that you need to be successful going forward, and it's important. Forgiveness, true forgiveness.
Yeah.
If you give your ex the right to make the decision that they made, then you learn to appreciate the foolish decisions that your current would make and give them the right, because you understand that, hey, that's just the way they are and that's just the way they feel about it, and you learn to work with that. But if you hold a anger at what your ex did or what happened in the past relationship and you never forgive and let go, what you're taking into your other relationship is hurt, resentment, and and it will always happen, as soon as your spouse does something that reflects something similar to what that other person does, you have a restimulation, and a restimulation of emotions, of attitude, and because you haven't dealt with it in the previous relationship, it comes up again and it does the same thing to you. I think that the word karma, you hear karma, what goes around comes around. I'm going to give you something that's real, and I tell a lot of Christians that pastors that are married one time could never ever teach you this because they might not want to believe in it. But the
Right.
truth of the matter is, you just repeat the cycle until you get it right. You do not, there is nothing different about you. You don't change anything. You're the same you. And the person that you get involved with, the same thing that upset you in a previous relationship, you're going to have it in the same relationship, and you're going to have to face it. And until you learn to forgive and let go what the other person did to you, and then face the reality that you're looking at it again, but you now have to find a constructive way as opposed to a destructive way of dealing with it, you will be in the same rut as I found myself in. And I think the other dynamic was that my partners, they were in places where they never dealt with their other issues, and I was kind of like, I dealt with mine. I kind of had it together to some degree. I'm not claiming perfection in my other relationships, but to some degree I had, you know, an understanding, and their discomforts and their angers, when they see it reflected in me and what I did, albeit known other than the fact that I'm a natural man, it caused problems.
Yeah, and you know that's so. I think that's an epic place to kind of wrap up to wrap up the hero's journey, because it applies across the board, whether it's in business or in your personal life. When you continue to, you know, you will continue to repeat cycles until you get it right, or until sometimes until you just forgive. I mean, even the lack of forgiving something could just be the trigger for you to finally get it right the next time. We can go into that so very deep that it could take up multiple shows. So I would just say to you this: I would say, if you find yourself in the same relationships, or if you find yourself in the same business situations over and over again, you're being asked to repeat it until you get it right. Start with
Yes.
forgiveness and start forgiving the past mistakes, and see if that at least helps a little bit, and then look to start to figure out what else could be going on. Reverend Steele, the first half of today's show has been epic and off the charts. You've got so much great information, so much great experience. I swear, like I said, we could talk forever. Folks who know me, who know how much I like to talk, I'm controlling myself because we could have 1,000 questions at this point. But we only have an hour show, and we got to get to the Experts Focus segment. Before we do, we're going to take a very quick break while I take my one breath an hour. We're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, on the flip side, we're going to have Reverend Steele back for the second half of today's Expert Showcase episode. And it's all going to be about divorce and all the other fun stuff, and he's going to help you. And this is, I shouldn't say fun stuff. I'm so amped up that this is, you know, very emotional topic. So I'm going to compose myself. We're going to take a break, and you want to stick around because you're going to be able to hear a Reverend's view on marriage and divorce 4 wives later. He's got the experience. We're going to walk you through some things that will help you and help make your life better. So stick around, and we'll be right back. Are you a coach, an author, or a speaker who wants your very own web TV show just like Expert Showcase, only with all your branding around it? Then what you want to do is head on over to VideoContent.Agency, go up to the Work With Us tab, send us your information, let's start a conversation, let's see if we can develop a program around you and your message. And until we see you there, make it an epic day. And welcome back to today's episode of Expert Showcase. As you know from watching the first half, oh, you say you didn't watch the first half? Go watch the first half. It's all about Reverend Steele and his hero's journey. Do it now. Watch the first half, then come on back. We're here with Reverend Steele. He's given us his journey of loss and pain, and why that makes him the perfect person to help you through, you know, especially if you're going through some personal problems right now in your marriage, or, you know, in your marriage or relationship. That's why it makes him the perfect person to help you. In this part, the Expert Focus segment, we're going to talk about a Reverend's view on marriage and divorce. And it might not be what you think. It might be, who knows? You might have made an assumption, and it might not be. You're going to have to stick around to see. But he's got the experience, because this is his view 4 wives later. So, Reverend Steele, before we dig deep into the 3 bullet points, give us a quick overview of what we're of your view on marriage and divorce, and what we're going to be talking about here in this segment.
Well, first, as a reverend, I want to be very open. I've learned some amazing things on my journey, And one of the most important things that I've learned is that you can control yourself, but you can't control others. That's foundational. You can control yourself, but you cannot control others. Not with your prayers, not with your money, not with your your good associations. You can't. And my take on divorce is I do not subscribe to divorce. I don't approve of divorce. I don't like divorce. I am not happy about divorce at all, because there's some parts of me and some teachings and some insight that I received that any person who wants to have a divorce, I'm the last person they should talk to. And the reason why that is because I don't have no support for you whatsoever in getting divorced. I want to make that clear. If you want to divorce somebody and you think that I'm a perfect person because I have a good excuse because I've been divorced a couple of times and you're going to talk to me, no, you don't have support from me, because I know some things that are going to happen to you and the person and other persons involved that you really, if you think about it, you wouldn't want it to happen to them if you're really sensible, logical, and you did genuinely love the person. And I'm not talking about marriages of convenience. I'm talking about true love marriages that went bad because of communication or because of whatever else that is fixable. That's important for you to know. It's fixable. And I think that the concepts that pastors and elders and a lot of persons who work with relationships they have is correct. You don't need to have a divorce. You do not. You just need to find someone who has the ability to touch on those points that are going to be able to trigger the response that is needed so your relationship can be saved. Because at the end of the day, it is savable, it is fixable. Don't tell me that a Mercedes Benz just came out and because you don't know how to fix it, you're gonna throw it in and buy a new car. No. There are specialists who know exactly how to fix that car, even if it means buying a new part, but not buying a new car. So my concept on divorce is I don't subscribe, I don't support, I don't endorse, I'm not excited and happy about it. Definitely not. On the
Right.
concept of marriage, my take on marriage is so honorable and is, I'm not just speaking as a Christian. You notice that I've not quoted any Bible verses, any scriptures, anything. I'm speaking on a natural humanist level, and I'm here as a reverend, but I want to speak as a human being because I don't just want persons to think that because I'm a reverend, I have a Christian perspective. No, I don't have a Christian perspective. I have a human perspective on marriage. And my human perspective says that marriage is honorable. It causes a child to be developed wholly and in the right manner, both psychologically, emotionally, physically, but also it causes an individual to reach their full potential in life, because we only use as men the left side of our brain. Women use the right side of their brains. So when you have a man and a woman come together, what happens is that you have the ability to accomplish great things together as a unit, as a team. And that's why great, wise leaders, when they have a major corporation, they choose somebody who's married because they know that that person is well-rounded.
Right, exactly. Yep, I hear you. So, like we said in the first part, you have to watch it to get the whole thing. But it's kind of like the parts, two parts come together to form a greater whole. So go back and watch the hero's journey. Let's dive right in. In this, we're going to talk about three specific points: honesty, in-laws, and a clear conscience. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm not sure if anybody has ever said honesty, in-laws, and a clear conscience in the same sentence. So I think I might be the first in the world to say that. Um, I don't know. I could be, but because when most people think of those three things, they don't normally go together. But we're going to make them go together, and we're going to get some epic information right now. Let's start off with honesty. When we were prepping for the show, your quote was, "Be honest with yourself before it's too late." Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think in the relationship building stages, you find that we tend to compromise. It's natural. and we don't see it as compromise. We see it as, oh, that's okay, that's not so bad. I could ignore that. You know,
Yeah.
that's not a big deal. And 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 because we're doing that, we're building a relationship based on false realities. It's not loud because it's not something that you're freaking out about, but the truth of the matter is it is a problem, and it is something that you're not being honest about, that discomforts you or makes you uncomfortable. So when you're not honest with yourself, then it mirrors to your partner. It mirrors to them. And you're all of a sudden in a position where you're telling them lies because, oh, her best mate is talking to her on the phone, and he's a guy, and you're comfortable with it. It's okay. They were best friends for a really good long time, so it's okay. But you're laying down there stewing, thinking, I wonder what she's talking about. I don't like that. That's not nice. And you have negative about it, but because you don't want to push the person away because you see how they value that person, and you don't want to come across negative, or you don't want to come across like controlling, if that's the term they would use, you tend to put yourself in the comfort zone of, it's okay. But here's the thing: when that happens in a relationship, it's okay. But when you get married, you own the person owns you. That's something that turns on inside of you subconsciously. I'm not trying to say that when you get married you own a person. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when you get married, subconsciously that person belongs to you, and you respond and behave in a manner that reflects that, even though you don't say it, because
Yeah.
it's an unspoken. And then that's one of the things that you get angry about now. And all of a sudden you start addressing something that you're gonna hear, but why didn't you say that to me then? Because the person on the other side of the picture now is honestly thinking it's okay with you.
Yeah, well, and I think it sounds like there's a difference because to me, there's kind of like three things that happen in a relationship. There's the things that you subconsciously just deal with, meaning that you don't even think about, and it doesn't even bother you. It really doesn't bother you. It's just kind of out there. Then there's the things that you deal with. In other words, the conscious things that you realize that it bothers you a little bit, but you just kind of put it aside and say, it's no big deal. Then there's the things that you choose to make a big deal. And I think what you're saying, and I've seen it myself, where you have the middle things. Not the things you don't even realize. Because if people are free spirited and they really do not care who their partner talks to, then it's never going to come up. But it's the people in the middle, the people that consciously have to think about and stop from being upset about something. That's where I think the problem lies, right? I mean, if you're sitting there and if you're consciously upset about something, but just saying, you know what, it's no big deal, and you have to think about it. In other words, if you're actively thinking about it, then you should be actively thinking about being honest and saying, look, this bothers me, and then either figure out how to make it not bother you, or make the situation go away. I mean, am I making any sense here? Am I on base? Am I off base?
You're on base with the three dynamics of honesty. The dynamic of you think about it, but it's not a big deal. Subconsciously, it is there, but it's okay. Or the dynamic of, yes, you are angry, you're upset about it, but you're just gonna suppress it because you don't want to upset the person. Those are the three dynamics of the honesty. But here's the thing that I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with the honesty entirely. All three of those dynamics are the dynamics that make up the reality of being honest or dishonest. If you're in a position where you're thinking about it, but it's not a big deal, and it angers you, but it's not a big deal. Let's just stop at the point. It angers you.
Yeah.
Big deal or small deal, it angers you,
Well, I
and
think
you're
that's
supposed to.
go
and,
ahead.
and I think that in being honest, you sit down and you wanna talk to the partner and says, "Hun, um, I'll be honest with you, boo. I felt a little uncomfortable when you know you did that, babes. forgive me. I don't want you to think that, you know, it's a big deal. It's not really a big deal, darling, but I just felt a little uncomfortable. And then you get the feedback from your partner. If it was a big deal, how would she respond to you? Would she says, well, darling, if you don't want me to do that, you know I wouldn't do that because I don't want you to be unhappy. Or would she respond, excuse you? But am I not an individual too? Can't I make my own decisions? You need to in the early stages of a relationship get the understanding of how would your spouse to be respond
Yeah.
when you have a little issue, because let me be honest, you will have big issues.
Yep. And that's really the key. And I think that the point I was trying to where I was trying to go earlier was that if you don't think about it, I mean, if it doesn't even enter your mind, I mean, literally, if it doesn't enter your mind, then you're being honest with yourself, and you're really okay with it. But
Yeah.
if it enters your mind at all, then you utilize that as a way to say, okay, how I can use this as a way to be honest. I think some people are afraid to be honest because they're afraid of what's going to happen. But, and I think you'd agree with this, but it's better to be honest and take a chance on what is going to happen and have something bad happen, unless it's really bad, than to be quiet and all of a sudden have that really bad thing happen when you're married and when there's a lot more on the line, right?
Yeah, I think I'll share a joke with you. In my marriage currently, my wife and I, I'm brave. When we were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time, then I'm brave because I'm like, well, we weren't having sex or anything like that. So I'm thinking, you ain't even gonna get to the stage of marriage because I'm gonna tell you how I feel. I don't care if you like it or not, because it's, I've been married and divorced and I hide my feelings and I walk around pretending, and I'm not pretending to you. So if you like it, you deal with it. If you don't like it, we'll figure out a way. But I'm telling you straight up, this is how I feel about it. And I used to do that tremblingly meaning, and I don't know if that's a word, tremblingly. I used to
It
do it.
is now.
Yeah, yeah, we could copyright that word tremblingly. That's Reverend Michael Steele saying it, tremblingly. I used to be doing that tremblingly, saying to her these things, anticipating, is she going to say, no, I don't want anything to do with you? Or is she going to say, I understand your passion, and you know, and the truth is, my wife understood. And then the things that were problems, they stopped being problems because she understood it. And we talked about it, and I fell in love with her. I fell in love with, if if she's doing something I don't like, or if I'm doing something she doesn't like, we can just openly talk about it, have a heated little discussion about it. But 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 then right after, hon, what are you having for dinner? What are you having for lunch? Or you know, and
Yep.
those are dynamics that are healthy to have. You need to put yourself in a position where you can be truthful. That's the crunch at this point. You gotta be in a position where you can be truthful, heard or not.
Exactly, because being truthful and starting off from a place of honesty, while it may not feel comfortable, it's going to save you a lot of problems going forward. It's going to save you a whole lot of problems in the future. So that really
Yeah.
leads us into our next point, about in-laws. And like I said, we're talking honesty, in-laws, and a clear conscience. Okay, so what about in-laws can't we deny? What is it? What can't we deny about in-laws?
This is and here's the thing. I have, and I want to share from, um please bear, and I'm so sensitive to this. I guess with time I'll get over it. I have four sets of in-laws.
Yeah.
So, and those are relationships that, my first wife's dad loves me like his son
Yeah.
to this day. And when we were gonna get divorced, he agreed, and he was there with me because he understood what was going on and what happened, and he's still my dad. And and that's good, and okay. Um, I don't have bad relations with individuals that I'm married to, because I believe that when you get married, you marry a family. A lot of people want to get married to an individual and not realize it's a family. Um, But here's something that's very critical. That's very critical. If you get married, your in-law, let's use the term now, man to woman. I'm the man, my in-law is my wife is the woman. So her mother and her father are always going to be in a position where they favor her. It doesn't matter how they paint the picture to you, they're gonna favor her. With the son, the mother is gonna favor her son. It doesn't matter. They might show you a negative side. They might show you a bad side. They might show you as the son, and the wife might think your mother loves me more than she loves you, and the son in his ignorance might think the mother. But the dynamics of relationship is that the mother knows from wisdom that if she loves the daughter a lot, the daughter's gonna treat her son good, and she's gonna come home, and the mother's gonna get to see her son.
Yeah. Yep.
If she gets on the daughter's side and makes the son angry, the son is thinking that the mom don't like him, and she's always picking up for the daughter, but the son doesn't realize that the mother loves him and wants him to be around. So she's going to be on the daughter's side because it's the daughter that's going to bring him around.
Yep.
But she also knows that if she favors the daughter, as a woman, and as a protector of her husband or her man, is gonna do everything to cause that man to keep from around his mother, because she don't want no competition.
Okay. I think I followed you. So I think what you were saying is that when the mother feels that if she treats the daughter-in-law a certain way, that she's gonna see more of her son, but the daughter-in-law feels that the daughter-in-law um, is concerned about competition from the mother because of the female dynamics. Is that what I'm hearing?
That there are two sides that you looked at. The
Okay.
mother feels that if she's looking after the daughter-in-law, that she can keep the relationship sweet and nice, and the son will always be there, and she will see her son that she could boast and brag about, all that good
Okay.
stuff.
Yep. Makes sense.
But if the mother now loves the son and is rejecting the daughter, the daughter-in-law,
Oh, okay. I see
the,
what. Yeah.
the,
So
the, the the daughter-in-law now feels as though the mother is going to destroy her relationship and is controlling her man, and she
yeah.
wants to control her man. She don't want him to be a mummy's boy.
So what you're saying is, for all guys out there that are married, one of the things, I think this is one of the things that you can't deny. For all guys out there that are married, which I'm still single, by the way, and there is the dating piece of my. I have to throw my dating segment in this in every single one of my shows. But
Chris,
but
Chris, you're not single. You've got a cat. Chris, look
that
right there. You can that
that
cat right there.
that's true. I actually have two. So, but so now I finally get the point. What you're saying is, and I can speak from experience. What you're saying is that we as guys really have to understand that the best possible scenario is actually that while we're married, that our mom actually does treat our wife better, so to speak, than us, because if the mom was still favoring us, then the wife would kind of have the jealousy, which is, it's female to female jealousy. I get it. So she would have that jealousy, which would then, lead to problems in our relationship. And as long as our mom is sitting there and, treating the daughter-in-law as either an equal or maybe slightly treating her slightly better than the son, then all the dynamics work, because then the daughter-in-law feels safe. She brings the son around. The son gets to see his mom, and everybody's happy. Is that kind of the triangle we're talking about?
Yeah, but I wanna drive something home that's most important.
Okay.
That's a good situation, but here's the thing. The perfect situation is to go visit them on Thanksgiving Day and let them keep out of your business. I'm not. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be. I'm gonna give you my heart here, because you see, it's easier to get divorced when you have your parents supporting you, loving you, and holding on to you, because you have somewhere to go. You have an emotional crutch to hold on to. You have somebody that's got your back.
Right.
But when you're in a situation where it's you and your partner and the rest of the world, when you're in a situation where it's do or die, then your level of commitment is stronger. And the arguments and the quarrels and the frustrations, they don't get as detrimental as they could if every weekend you go to see your mom and your mom is telling you, well, if it's getting so bad, why don't you just come home? Or your dad is saying, you know what, you just need to just let her go. So what I'm
Yeah.
saying is ideally the best position in the whole scenario would be for an individual to recognize, leave and cleave. Then shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and vice versa. So that when it comes to the family and stuff, the children get see, and parents who are wise would take a back seat and says, it's none of my business. I don't want to hear. And
Yeah.
when they do that, they put the person at a place where they have to think, focus, and make a rational decision on how they're going to treat their relationship, not depending on the fact that they have someone that's going to be an emotional crutch when they fall through. And the
Well,
same thing goes for relationships and different friends on the outside.
and that's what I was going to say. And I think that's that is becoming the key. I think emotional support, people need it. I think it's excellent, whether it's religious, whether it's spiritual, whether it's friends. I think it's good to have that because sometimes without that, people, in my opinion, without that, sometimes people can get into a very, very dark place. But there comes a time where you need to make those decisions and you need to make sure that you're making the decision for yourself, not based on what other people want and not based on the fact it's the easiest decision because some of the decisions in the world are the toughest ones to make. A lot of times when people get divorced, what will happen, like you had just said, is either the family or the friends or somebody else will be so supportive and say, yeah, the guy's a jerk, you should leave him, or she's a jerk, you should leave her. And it compounds things where if the two people were just left to kind of say, okay, figure this out yourself, and then if you want to get divorced, if you figure, I mean, I've gotten divorced. I'm not a big believer in it, but if there, it's one thing where we differ a little bit. I do think some things end up being irreparably broken, so to speak, and I think that, and we can talk about that in a whole nother episode. I think you and I should have a debate on when that happens. I think that actually would be fun. To be honest with you, I think our viewers would like it. I believe the same thing you believe, though, that for the majority, most people can fix things. I mean, it's that things are fixable. I think where I think what you're saying here. And let me wrap this up because this is your show. This is you're the guest. It's not my show. It's your show. You're more important. The point here and what you're really saying, I think, is so true. Is that if you can find a way to balance everything so that you rely on yourself and you end up in a situation where if things happen, all those decisions are being made by you without external influence. That's the best way. I mean, and I think the thing is about in-laws that you can't deny. What I took from here is that you can't deny that they're still going to love and still going to act in a certain way, and they're going to try and do what they think is best for you. However, they don't always know what's best for you. Only you and your partner can get together and should be getting together and really deciding what's best for you because your in-laws, your friends, everything else, they don't have to live with you. Your partner does. Right, Reverend Steele?
That's right. It's them that are going to wake up next to you and get up and go to work, and you're going to be there or spear. You'll either be there or you'll be spear.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and move into the third point, the power of a clear conscience. In our show prep, we talked about this. This point was going to be the power of a clear conscience and a life goal. So now that we've gotten through the first two, honesty and in-laws, now we're going to talk about a clear conscience. So tell us what you're talking about here when you say a power of a clear conscience and a life goal.
Well, the power of a clear conscience in this segment is referring to those who've already been divorced and they're looking now at going forward and getting married. This is specifically geared to those individuals. The power of a clear conscience means that you sit down and you look at the relationship that you were in. You look at, did I treat my spouse honestly? Was I open? Was I transparent? Did I cheat on this person, or did I withhold things from this person? And I think one of the reasons why I have been able to rise up and bounce back so quickly I'm 44, and it's such a shame to say you're 44 and you're on your fourth wife. It's such a shame. But
Mhm.
one of the reasons why I believe I've been able to bounce back is because I have a clear conscience. I make sure that I first I give, and as painful as it was, and as much as it ripped my heart out, I've been suicidal, and I'm going to be honest with you. And people look and says, "But you're a reverend. What do you mean suicidal?" But suicidal, but I'm still here. So it just means that I've felt the grief and the struggle and the hardship and the wanting to be away from on this earth, like anybody else would feel if they go through something that's extremely traumatic, or something that has a deep bearing on themselves. So I've been there. And one of the things that kept me was that I sat and I looked, and I had to look at me. I had to take myself off of what happened to me, or what somebody else did to me, and look at me, and have a clear conscience, and be at a place where I can become at peace with me, at peace with realizing that there are some things that are irreparable. Um, the Bible has a verse, and I don't take it for granted. Why then did Moses write them a bill of divorcement? And if it was from the beginning, it was not to be. There was not expected to be divorcement, but there is. And the reason is because of the hardness of the hearts. And any person's heart at any given time in any given situation can get hard. And we have to allow that. If we're not able to mold back that heart and bring it back soft and supple and all nice and jelly, then we will lose that relationship. Sad to say, it's a reality, sadly. But then the other part about a clear conscience that you need to be to have is when you step into a potential other relationship. If you don't have a clear conscience, you got to remember that the other person is a woman too,
Yeah.
and or a man, and whatever that person does that has the mirror image of what happened to you in the last relationship, you will be re-stimulated, and you will hold that in that person in contempt. You will bring that person into the mind that you were in your painful time, and you will resurface all those things, and you can't get past it.
Yeah.
And the reason why you can't get past it is because you've not dealt with the reality of clearing your conscience. And also, if you cheated on a person, it's harder to believe that the person that you get involved with is not going to cheat on you. I think a clear conscience is, I'm a very naive person to some degree, because one, I never text another person that when I have my wife, I would never text. If I forget my phone at home, I don't run back home. Oh my God, I forget my phone.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I hope it doesn't ring. I hope it doesn't ring. I hope it doesn't ring. No, my wife gives me her phone when my battery is when my battery is dead, and I says, "Hon, keep my phone," and I use hers, and she used my phone, and I use the phone as a simple scenario. But you know how serious men are with their phones, and who call them, text them, and WhatsApp them.
Well, and
So
it's funny because when you're a kid, it's fun to have those situations. When you're adult, when you start to progress into adulthood, it gets a little less fun. And then all of a sudden, when you really are an adult, you realize it is way too much work to do all of that stuff. And it's so much nicer and simpler to be. It's so much nicer and simpler and less stressful to just be honest and not be out doing something that you're worried about your partner, your significant other, your wife, your husband, what have you. Not just be out not doing stuff that you're worried about them, that you're worried about them finding out about. So I love the concept of a clear conscience because you get rid of the old baggage and you don't bring it into the new relationship. So you
yeah,
also mentioned in here about a life goal. What do you mean a life goal?
a life goal. I can. Today's my birthday, and on my Facebook post, somebody asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I said that I have it. A wife and a son. I have it. And now comes the time to sit down, walk, do whatever, and enjoy those things. if you don't have a life goal, and I'm talking about your relationship now, I'm not talking about business or all that stuff. All those are fringes. You see, a relationship is supposed to encompass the whole of you. And the whole of you means your business, your work life, your supporting of your family, and all that comes under the umbrella of a stable, healthy relationship that makes it successful. And and so because of a life goal is, what do I want to accomplish with having this person in my life? If your life goal is you want to have good, passionate sex, well, to be quite honest with you, a relationship don't stand long on that, because you can have good passionate sex with a number of individuals, and it just changes all the time. If your goal is to be having one of the biggest corporations and one of the biggest businesses, and you go and marry the CEO because she's at the top of the food chain, then guess what? When you get there and you are sat at the in the corridors of power, guess what happens? She becomes less valuable. If your life goal is to have a Bentley, I've been driving ladders and Scooters for so long, I long for a Bentley. I just want to earn enough that I could have a Bentley. And you and your wife work hard for a Bentley. Then soon from now, you find a girl that looks prettier in the front seat of a Bentley than she does. So your life goal in relation to marriage and relationship has to encompass, I want to see this person get old. Hon, I just want to see how you're gonna look when you're old. Hon, I just want to be, you see how me and you lay down and we talk all night about all different subjects. Good God. And you look at me sometimes and says, hon, please, I want to go to sleep. And then you open the curtain and you see the sun rising and you realize, gosh, we've been talking the whole night.
Yeah.
I just want to be in a position where I could sit in a rocking chair and watch the world go by. If we are rich, we do it together and travel. If we are poor, we just sit on one stool and you can sit on my leg together. But the life goal with regards to marriage and stability has to encompass everything about your partner.
Yeah. And that, I think, is really the key. And I think Reverend Steele, that's a great place to kind of wrap this up before I tell people how to get in contact with you, and do a few other things here real quick, because I think it's so powerful. Because in the end, you can want all of the financial things in life, and I've been there. I've been senior director for a Fortune 500 company. I mean, I've had it all, lost it all, and what I realized throughout this whole thing is that, in the end, all of that stuff should be transient, so to speak, or should be just passing. And the person you spend the rest of your life with, and the person that's right there by you, is what really is what's really important, in the whole, in the grand scheme of things. And really having somebody next to you that you can love and you can share everything with, and that you grow old and laugh, because there'll be a time when you won't be either running a company or be on stage or be doing what you're doing. And when the lights are off, and when the sun goes down and the lights are off, you want that person there rocking on the chair with you, or whatever, sitting on the beach. So, Reverend Steele, I'm going to do a couple things to wrap up before I ask you for your final thoughts. Folks, I've just thrown Reverend Steele's website up on the screen. Here's what I want you to do. If you want to avoid divorce and save your rocky marriage, or you want to get back your life, after a painful divorce, please head over to HopeTransplantMinistries.Name.com. It's on the screen. Sign up to Reverend Steele's private web community. He's also generously made a company. You give him a call at 246-255-0566, or send him an email at HopeTransplantMinistries@gmail.com. Request a personal consultation. Do one of those three things. All that information is going to be coming up in the credit reel. If you're just joining us now and you missed the whole thing, then you missed a lot of epicness, and you need to go and watch the rest of the episode. If you want to find out why a reverend who's been through 3 divorces is an expert on the topic of having a happier life and a happier marriage, because he is, you gotta go watch watch the hero's journey, the first half of the show, if you want to hear him talk more about his views on marriage and divorce and understand the key concepts of things like being honest and why that's so important, having a clear conscience and why that's one of the keys to everything, and something you all need to know, and what's going to happen with your in-laws so you can better handle it, then you need to watch the Expert Focus segment of the show. This has once again been an epic episode of Expert Showcase. Reverend Steele, before I wrap things up and we roll on out of here, is there any final words you want to say and leave our audience with today?
Well, the one thing that I want to leave our audience with is the Bible said it's not good that a man should be alone. And that's a fact. It's not good to be alone. It's good to have a companion, because you see, if it's just your parents, they're going to get old and they're going to leave you. If you have children from a single relationship and you wrap your life around your children, they're going to get older, they're going to have their families, and they're going to leave. And what happens when the lights go out? Who comforts you? Who holds you? Who listens to your conversations that nobody's interested in because they're so busy with their own lives that your conversations don't matter? My word is, look at working on yourself so that you can position yourself to have a companion, because that's all that matters. All the things, the money you earn, the things you do, the people you minister to, all those things are going to fade. But you know what's going to last? Is that on your last dying breath, you know that you have somebody that's there or was there, that you made an impact on their lives and they walked through this life's journey with you, and you made it together to be an example to others of how you can be successful in marriage and relationship.
Epic. And on an epic note, Reverend Steele, God bless. Thank you for being an epic guest today on Expert Showcase. Thank you for all of our epic viewers, and until next time, make it an epic day.